All right, UFC Vegas 102, Rodrigues, Cannonier, Rodrigues. Full card predictions, starting from the bottom, going to the top. First fight of the card, we got Jacqueline Cavalcanti versus Julia Avila. I think Cavalcanti's actually pretty good. She looked good in her last fight against Nora Cornoli on short notice, and she looked good against Josiane Nunes, who at the time was pretty highly touted. She's since lost to Chelsea Chandler, so make what you will of that win. But Julia Avila did lose to Miesha Tate in her last fight, and she hasn't fought in a year. So I'm going to go with Cavalcanti to win this fight. Next fight of the card, we've got Valter Walker versus Don'Tale Mayes. It's hard to know what to make of Valter Walker because he did lose his debut in a pretty unimpressive way. He was I don't know if he was a massive favorite in that fight, but he was a pretty highly touted prospect. He was like undefeated, all finishes, Johnny Walker's brother or cousin or whatever. And then he loses his debut. But in his last fight against Junior Tafa, I think, not Justin Tafa, he won with a heel hook at the end of round one. And that was a pretty solid performance. He's a pretty athletic heavyweight. Make of that what you will. He wouldn't be, in heavyweight, there's a pretty big gap between the guys in like the top 6, top 5, and the rest of heavyweight in athleticism. Obviously, in the top 10, you've got guys like Marcin Tybura and Sergey Spivak, and you had Romanov. It's like these guys aren't athletic. They're just athletic compared to everyone else. And I think Valter Walker's kind of in that range. And he's a decent grappler, and he's got heavyweight striking. He's got no skill on the feet, but he can knock you out. And then Don'Tale Mayes, solid. Gave a good fight to Shamil Gaziev. Didn't get finished. Didn't get finished by Hamdi. Arguably won that fight. But he did, lose to Shamil Gaziev, which is never a good sign. And he also lost to Augusto Sakai. And I think that Gaziev is probably a better grappler and a better finisher. And I think that Sakai is probably a better finisher and a better striker. But in the what he gives up in the finishing ability, he does gain in the athletic ability. I think he's more athletic, Valter Walker, than Augusto Sakai and Shamil Gaziev. So I'll pick him to win this. And it's heavyweight, so probably it'll be an early finish or a boring decision. Next fight at the card, Elijah Smith versus Vince Morales. This is actually a pretty exciting fight. I don't really care that much about either of these guys' careers, at least yet. But Vince Morales, he had his first UFC run, and he didn't do so hot. But he went away, fought a couple different promotions, but I think primarily Risen. And he looked pretty good. He improved a lot. And then he came back to the UFC and fought Lapulus. And he, lost a close decision. And Lapulus is a pretty solid fighter, pretty good prospect. So I think he's actually improved pretty significantly. I think he's a pretty solid fighter now. But I'm going to take Elijah Smith because he just looks like a pretty good prospect. He doesn't have the cleanest record. He has a loss. But the guy he lost to is pretty solid. The guy he lost to, I want to say it was Reyes Cortez. Let me check. But the guy he lost to is not a bum. He's got some pretty high level fights with mixed results. Let's see. Reyes Cortez, yeah. Tracy Cortez's brother. And his losses are to Peyton Tabit, Christian Rodrigues, and then a split decision loss in 2019. So the guy he lost to is no schlup. And the rest of his fights are decent guys. Like he beat an 8-0 guy in the Contender Series. He beat an 8-1 guy in Fury. 5-0 guy for regional belt, and all of that since 2022. So he's really young. He's only 22 years old. He became a pro in just over 2.5 years ago. So yeah, he's a good prospect. He's got some pop too. He went to a decision on the Contender Series, but in his 2 fights before that, he got a knockout in the first 2 minutes. So good prospect, pretty solid fighter. Just a little fun fact about his resume. When I was looking through it earlier, he beat Robert Trujillo, who is now a power slap fighter. And in Robert Trujillo's one of his power slap fights, or matches, or whatever you want to call them, he won the match in a very strange way. He beat the guy the other guy was the first one to slap him, and the other guy broke his hand on Robert Trujillo's chin. So interesting win. Just an interesting little record crossover, but I'm going to take Elijah Smith to win this. I just think he's pretty solid. it's hard. I haven't seen enough of him to say like this guy's going to lose to Vince Morales, but I do think Vince Morales is pretty solid now. 16-8 doesn't tell the whole story. Next fight up the card, we've got Gabriel Bonfim versus Khaos Williams. I've never really bought the hype for Khaos Williams. He's had a couple exciting fights, but he's incredibly inactive, and he just doesn't look super technical. He's got good pop, but he's gone to decision a bunch. It seems like anytime he fights anyone good, he goes to decision, and he doesn't have the kind of style that, lends to winning decisions. And Bonfim's pretty solid. He beat Angelusa in his last fight pretty clearly by decision, and Angelusa is a much more technical fighter than Khaos Williams. So if this fight goes to the decision, I don't see Khaos Williams out-techniquing and out-voluming and pressuring Khaos Williams Bonfim, and that's how you beat Bonfim. If you look at his last loss, is that his only loss? Is it one of his only losses? I think his only loss in the UFC, it was to Nicholas Dalby. That was kind of on a fraud check card too. That was the card where Leslie Zaleski dos Santos went to a draw with what's his face, the Dagestani guy, Renat Fakhretdinov. But his only loss on his record was to Nicholas Dalby, and how he lost was Nicholas Dalby used the clinch a lot, and he used a lot of volume, and he gassed out and broke Bonfim, especially with knees to the body and stuff like that in the clinch. But I really don't think Khaos Williams is going to do that. To out-technique a guy and break him over the course of a fight kind of requires a lot, especially when they're skilled. And I just don't think Khaos Williams is, technical enough or skilled enough to do that. So I'm going to take Bonfim to win this, probably by decision, but he could break Williams and get a stoppage later in the fight. I hope he doesn't trade with Williams, because in Williams' last fight he fought Carlson Harris, and I think Carlson Harris is a good enough grappler to beat Khaos Williams, but he just didn't shoot takedowns, and he got into like a dozen boxing exchanges and just got caught by an overhand right and lost. So if Bonfim does that, he can lose, but I think he's smart enough to not do that. Next fight up the card, Rafael Estevam versus Jesús Aguilar. Two of these guys pretty good flyweights. Jesús Aguilar, 11-2. He's got a good UFC record. He's 3-1 in the UFC. Beat Stuart Nickel, Mateus Mendonça, and Shannon Ross. Shannon Ross is a can, but he did knock him out in like 20 seconds. So that's what you want to do. His only loss in the UFC is to Tatsuro Taira, who really solid, top 5 guy. So pretty good record in the UFC. Unfortunately for him, he's fighting Rafael Estevam, who not the most technical fighter, not the best fighter, but he's 12-0, and he's 5'8" with a 69-inch reach at flyweight. And Jesús Aguilar is 5'4" with a 62-inch reach. So he's got a 7-inch reach disadvantage and a 4-inch height disadvantage, and he's fighting a flyweight. So you see those differences at middleweight and light heavyweight and heavyweight a lot, but you rarely see them in the lower weight classes, and you almost never see them at flyweight. So going to be a kind of an insurmountable disadvantage, I think, for Aguilar. And obviously Aguilar can catch him. Tall guys get caught all the time because they're used to being tall, but Aguilar is just not the biggest flyweight. He's actually pretty small. He's 5'4", so I don't think he's going to be using his reach to find a chin of a guy like Estevam. So I'm gonna take Estevam to just be a tall guy, probably outstrike him at distance, maybe out grapple. He's got a jiu-jitsu background, fights out of a jiu-jitsu gym. I think he's got the word jiu-jitsu tattooed across his chest. So good grappler probably, and I think he'll beat Jesús Aguilar. Next fight of the card. This fight I think got announced today or like yesterday. It's Jared Gordon versus Mashrabjon RuziBOEV. I had never heard of Mashrabjon RuziBOEV, but I've heard of RuziBOEV, and I was looking at the Tapology bout page, and this RuziBOEV guy is so unknown that he has the other RuziBOEV as his profile picture. He had Nursultan RuziBOEV's picture as his picture, which goes to show you, even though this guy has 25 fights professionally, he's a nobody. Just for some context, I'll go through Jared Gordon's record first. Since 2018, he's got these are his losses. He lost to Charles Oliveira, obviously top 5 guy, Grant Dawson, ranked prospect, pretty much undefeated, looked really good. And then he got robbed by Paddy Pimblett and robbed by Nasrat Haqparast. In my opinion, those fights weren't even close. Like, they shouldn't have been. It was very clear he won 2 rounds, and he lost. And then Bobby Green he went to a no contest with because of a quote-unquote accidental headbutt, even though Bobby Green was getting his ass whooped and just led with his forehead and headbutted Brian Dawson right on the chin. So, obviously that's Jared Gordon's. Those are the asterisks on his record since 2018. This is RuziBOEV's record since 2018. His last fight, 8-9 guy, he knocked him out in the first minute. 2011 guy knocked him out in the first minute. 12-17 guy went to a majority decision with. 16-14 guy knocked him out in the first minute. 2-0 guy knocked him out in the first round. 0-2 guy first round. 0-0 guy for a title first round. He lost to an 11-2 guy. 22-22 guy, rare record. Probably the only guy in the world with a 22-22 record in MMA. Beat him in the first round. 3-1 guy beat him in the first round. Lost to a 15-4 guy. 0-7 guy beat him in the first round. Beat an 0-0 guy, another one by majority decision, another one by first round finish, another one by second round finish, and lost to a guy who was 1-0 in 2019. That's his record since 2018. Sounds like a lot of fights. It also sounds like he's fighting in a lot of rigged fights. Why is he beating all of these guys with horrible records in the first round? And then you look at the rest of their losses, and they're all in the first round, almost all those guys. So he's coming from an interesting promotion in that he's fought in every promotion, I think. Open Fight Championships, ATF, WEF Pro Fight, Prof Fight, Brave CF 59, ATF 11 on the same card, WEF Prof Fight, WEF Global, Alash Pride, Open FC, Octagon, not with a K, with a C, Open Fight Championships, Brave CF, Anjayan Mayor Cup, WEF, Niza FC, WEF, Falco FC, Legion Fighting Championship, Legion FC, N1 Pro. It's like this guy's fighting in every organization, and I just don't trust. I think he's getting rigged fights. At very least, he's being fed cans with the misleading records. So I don't think he's all that. His record is 20-4-1. But you look at the other RuziBOEV. Let me pull up his record. Let's see. Nursultan RuziBOEV. Jeez, I can't say. Uh, 34-9-2. Ended up 2-1 in the UFC. But you look at his record, a lot of the same thing. A lot of first round finishes to guys who have horrible records. And then, weirdly, a lot of decisions that he lost. You look at his record and it's like, oh, when he came into the UFC, he came in as a welterweight, and he was 6-6 as a welterweight, but like 25-2 as a middleweight. It's like, what is going on with these guys' records? I think these Uzbekistanis, but these RuziBOEVs, I'll give them that, just completely rigged the records. I think it's completely fake. They're not skilled at all in the UFC. They just have some power and some finishing potential. And in fact, when I'm looking at his page, I realized Nursultan RuziBOEV's nickname is Black, and Mashrabjon RuziBOEV's nickname is Black Jr. So I think it's probably his little brother or something. I don't know. He's also a welterweight, and he's fighting lightweight. Weird fight. I don't even know if this fight is real. I didn't see it until today, which is, it's weird for a fight with two fighters who didn't have previous bookings to get announced, 5 days before the event. But I don't think the guy is good at all. I think he's completely rigged, and I think a lot of people are going to get tricked by his record into picking against Jared Gordon, especially when we consider the fact that Jared Gordon has 2 losses in a no contest that shouldn't exist on his record recently. So I'm picking Jared Gordon to win. He's actually good at fighting, and we don't know if that's true for RuziBOEV. All right, next fight of the card, Angela Hill versus Ketlen Souza. Angela Hill is decent at fighting. Ketlen Souza, I don't think is. Hill is good at, she's not decent, but she's good at beating fighters who aren't good. And Ketlen Souza, I think she's 2-1 in the UFC. Who did she lose to? I know she beat Gregory in her last fight, but Gregory has a good penchant for being the significantly better fighter going to the fight, and then just taking a random errant punch and getting knocked out. And that happened to her. She got dropped, and then she got finished. She got knee-barred by Karine Silva in a minute. 2 years ago, that was her first fight in the UFC. I don't think she's all that. 2-1 in the UFC. I mean, a couple of her losses are to, I think Diane Cordoso was in the UFC at one point, or Ariana Carnelosi in the UFC at one point. I think she's probably still in the UFC. And then she lost to a 1-3 Fabiolani Mello. I don't know. I don't think she's good. I think she's got a couple fluke wins. And maybe she's got some pop, but I don't think she's a good fighter. So I'm picking Angel Hill. Next fight up the card, Jose Delgado versus Connor Matthews. A lot of decent prospects on this card. It seems like these Contender Series guys they're like making this. We're at the 5 months after the season ended, where like these guys are ready to fight in the UFC now. But yeah, Connor Matthews, former Daniels by Contender Series alum, 2-time alum, 1-1 in the Contender Series, gets signed to the UFC, loses his first fight. I don't think he's very good. He's a New England cartel guy, so a lot of those guys just get signed to the UFC for fun. I guess Dan is like a Boston guy, so he likes those New England guys. But they kind of just get put in to lose a couple times and then, or win against complete bums and then lose. And he's lost to his bum, and he's getting fed to a good prospect. That happened with Isaac Dolgarian. He got fed a complete schlup from New England cartel. What was his name? Brennan Marat. This guy, New England cartel, came to the UFC 8-1. Got finished in 20 seconds by Terrence McKinney. He got finished by Dolgarian in his next fight. So these guys, the UFC likes to just sign these guys to let them lose in the UFC, I guess. But I'm taking Delgado. He's out of MMA Lab, which is a pretty good gym. Not New England Cartel, which is Calvin Kattar and a bunch of his friends who suck at fighting. Next fight up the card, Rodolfo Vieira versus Andre Petroski. Keep this one quick. Vieira, his 2 losses are to Chris Curtis, who was ranked like a month ago or 2 months ago, and Andre Petroski. I'm sorry, what is his name? Fluffy Hernandez, who is currently ranked, and Andre Petroski lost to Jacob Malkoun, who doesn't know how to fight. So I'm going to take Vieira to win this. I know Petroski lost that fight by headbutting Malkoun in the hip and getting knocked out, but he wasn't looking great in that fight anyways. And he split decision to Mearshard. He's not a very good fighter, so I'm going to take Vieira to win this. Next fight of the card. This is my fight of the night pick. This might not be a good fight, actually, but it'll probably be technical. Nazim Sadykhov versus Ismael Bonfim. Sadykhov's last fight was really, really good. Unfortunately, it was like a year and a half ago, almost. It was against Vyacheslav Borshev, one fight of the night on UFC 295. Sadykhov kind of fought like an idiot in that fight, but it worked kind of well. He just stood in front of Borshev the whole time, and I can tell he was just trying to break Borshev. He was eating a lot of leg kicks, but he was punching to the body, throwing spin and stuff. Just trying to stay in front of him for as long as he could to get Borshev to gas himself out or, make a mistake. And later, or about halfway through the second round, Borshev was whooping him, landing good leg kicks, landing shots to the body, and he goes for some head movement, gets caught by a right hook, gets rocked, and then eats like a super clean head kick. And Sadykhov jumps on top of him, does some damage, ground and pound, almost finishes him, and then stays in mount for a bit of the fight. Borshev is a really good striker, and he's pretty tough, so he was able to bounce back. You see his toughness in his Chase Cooper fight. He was able to bounce back, win the third round after winning the first, and win decision. But I think if Sadykhov has a similar game plan and similar success against Bonfim, I don't know if Bonfim is going to be able to bounce back and win. Bonfim usually slows down in the later rounds, and he struggles to get finishes after like the first half of the fight. So if he gets behind early, which I think he might, I don't think he's going to come back and get a finish or come back and get a 10-8 or win the end of the second and the third. And I think Sadykhov has a good enough grappling to, if he's ahead, he can just grapple and stay on top. And I know he didn't do that against Borshev, but Borshev was really hurt. It didn't really make sense for Bonfim to grapple. I don't think he knew how fast Borshev was going to recover. And he's also learned from that, I'm sure. I'm sure in his head, he's like, if I ever hurt a guy and I'm winning, I'm just going to take him down and hold him there. It also might be in Bonfim's genes to break from pressure. I mean, if you look at his brother, Gabriel, that's how he lost to Dalbia, I was talking about earlier. He broke because of the pressure. And Sadykhov has crazy pressure, and he also is a very, very good grappler. So, and Ismael Bonfim got submitted by Benoit in the first round because he was on Benoit's back, fell off, gave up his own back, and got choked out. So Sadykhov also goes for submissions like that. He went for a couple arm triangles from mount. He was looking at arm bars from on top as well. So I think if Sadykhov gets in a good position, or if he hurts Bonfim at any point in the fight, he's going to win. And I also think his style of fighting matches up really well for getting Bonfim to make mistakes or break. So, yeah, I'm taking Sadykhov. Next fight of the card, quick one, Edmen Shahbazyan versus Dylan Budka. Shahbazyan loses to good fighters. He lost to Mavov, he lost to Brunson, he lost to... Oh, Mearshard isn't good. Well, he loses to... loses to good grapplers at least. But he usually looks pretty solid against bad fighters. He knocked out Jared Gooden, right? I confused Jared Gooden and Gordon, but I'm pretty sure it was Gooden. 2 fights ago, he beat Daucha Lungumbiala. So, looked good against those 2 fighters who suck, and Dylan Budka is a classic, this guy who sucks. Got signed to the UFC at 7-2, he's 7-4 now. Lost to Cesar Almeida. Wasn't able to take him down. Cesar Almeida is a primary kickboxer. You know, he fought Alex Pereira a couple of times in kickboxing. He came into the UFC as a kickboxer, and in his debut, or in his, I think it was his debut, or maybe his second fight, he got put against Budka. It was his debut. He got put against Budka, and Budka couldn't take him down. And Budka got broken and lost the second round by striking. Now, Cesar Almeida very well could be a better grappler than Edmen Shahbazyan. Shahbazyan is a horrible grappler. In his last fight, he dropped Gerald Mearshard with body shots, jumped on top of him, tried to punch him in the head, even though his head was fine, and lost. So, you know, I don't, maybe Shahbazyan sucks, but I'm going to take him to win because Dylan Budka couldn't take down Almeida at all, who was a debuting MMA fighter. Or that wasn't his first MMA fight, but he, you know, lost because he should have been taken down. Dylan Budka is a really good grappling paper. I think he was like a D1 or D2 champion or something like that. And he couldn't take down Cesar Almeida. I don't think he's going to take down Edmen Shahbazyan. Shahbazyan's probably going to knock him out. There we go. He also lost to freaking Andre Petroski, who sucks. Or, yeah. Okay. Next fight of the card, Youssef Zalal versus Cavalcanti. Youssef Zalal has looked really good in his second run in the UFC. He got caught after losing to Topuria, which is kind of a crazy statement to make now. But he's looked really good in his last couple. Arm triangled, Jack Shore, who's a really good grappler. And I think he's submitted everyone since he's been back in the UFC. It was like Jarno Aarons, Jack Shore, Billy Quarantillo, someone else. He looks for submissions, which is something I like against Kattar, because Kattar got easily out-grappled by Aljo, but Aljo was really just trying to hold him against the fence and stay off the feet. But Zalal kind of goes for it. He could get caught, but I think he'll go for it. And if he gets a takedown against Kattar, who's got bad knees, he's getting old, I think he's going to find the submission. And if not, I think he's going to do good damage from top position. And I don't think Kattar really has the ability anymore to just like stop a guy who's trying to come in on him. I don't think he's going to catch him with an elbow like he did against Stevens or, you know. But I think Kattar kind of has a style nowadays where he lets other people do what they want to him. I mean, just look at the Holloway fight. So I'm going to pick Zalal to submit Kattar. If not, probably win by decision. Next fight of the card, main event, Jared Cannonier versus Gregory Rodrigues, RoboCop. I'm going to take Cannonier even though he's an underdog, but honestly, I'm not really sure why he's the underdog. I know he's 40 now, and he's taken a lot of damage in his last 2 fights. Didn't get finished, arguably. It's weird. Against Nasruddin Amavov, he got finished in the 4th round, but he didn't get finished. It was like a really bad stoppage. And then against Kyle Borrello in his next fight, he got knocked out cold, hit the ground, took a couple punches, and the fight went to the decision. So kind of backwards there. But I really don't think he's taken a step back. Like, I think he looks pretty similar level to how he did before. Good guys who are good at fighting are going to find his shin and beat him up and kind of use his lack of speed against him. But I don't think Gregory Rodrigues is that good. I mean, he beat Tallulah, Junior Park. Like, these guys suck. Like, this middleweight. Like, the top of middleweight, I think, is a little bit better than the unranked bums. Who else did he beat? I mean, Tallulah sucks. And honestly, like, the elbows that he was landing on Tallulah were illegal. And I think in like 30% of fights he could have been DQ'd for that. He knocked out Brad Tavares, which is impressive, but Brad Tavares isn't, you know, the best fighter. Lost to Junior Park as well. So beat Chidina Jacqueline, Christian Leroy. Like, he's beating Christian Leroy Duncan by decision, who is really chinny, and then he's getting shot up to like the number 7 ranked guy. Like, I don't get that. Lost to Bruno Ferreira by getting cut. But I just think that he's not the fastest middleweight. He's not the most technical middleweight, and I think Cannonier's just going to outpace him. And I think either he slows down in the later rounds, or Cannonier just kind of beats him up and wins a boring decision. I think he'll probably slow down in the later rounds, or I think it's more likely he slows down in the later rounds than that he gets a finish. And I think that's important. So I'm going to take Cannonier to win by decision. Let me know if you agree or disagree with all my picks in the comments. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, links in the description, watch my previous predictions. I think that's all. Thank you. My point with the main event pick is that Imavov and Barala were able to do damage later because Cannonier slowed down, but I think Giron might slow down more. And I think it's more likely that he slows down and loses than wins a decision. So there's my prediction. Thank you for watching.